So testing. So that's...
Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of Burnside Council, as it is opening at 7 p.m. As those of you at home can see, we are spaced out appropriately according to COVID restrictions in the chamber. We are not yet ready to welcome you into the chamber because of these restrictions, although it sounds like things are eased up as of today, as of next Monday I mean. But as soon as they are removed, you will be welcomed back live into the chamber. Please stand for the acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the original custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. In the case of an emergency, an alarm will sound and then please follow the directions of staff. I remind you that all council meetings are live streamed through the council's website and a copy of the agenda is also available by downloading from this website. I also remind elected members to use your microphones when I indicate to you that you can speak and that you raise your hand when you wish to be heard. Usual meeting etiquette and protocols apply during the meeting and I ask you to turn off your mobile phones or place them on silent during the debates. Tonight we will again be using the new meeting procedures, so bear with us as we familiarise ourselves with them. And before we begin formally, I wish to wish everybody, both here and at home, a very happy Christmas and hopefully a much better and hopefully eventually COVID-free 2021. I do that now because there'll be not so many people perhaps listening at the end of the meeting, whenever that may be. So, announcements we've done. Apologies, we have no apologies. We have no leave of absence. Is there anyone who wishes to make a declaration of interest? No, thank you. And confirmation of minutes, I seek a mover. Thank you, Councillor Dawes, seconded by Councillor Turnbull. All those in favour? Carried. We don't have any adjourned business, but we do have we have no public question time or presentations, but we do have a deputation. And it is from Mr. Jim Bastiris, and I believe he is going to be speaking to us from the corridor out there. So when you are ready, Mr. Bastiris, if you wouldn't... Sorry? Yes, yeah. Grant, would you like to just ask him to come in a bit closer? Yeah. Come in and stand against the wall there if you don't mind standing. That's true. Would you like to sit there? 5 minutes. 5 minutes is, I'll tell you in a second. 5 minutes is a long time standing. The subject is the White Rock Quarry motion that we're looking at tonight. So I welcome you, Mr. Batsiris, and you have 5 minutes with a warning bell at 4 minutes. And if you wouldn't mind remaining seated afterwards, and if there's any elected member who wishes to ask you a question through me, then they may do that straight after. Okay? Thank you. When you're ready, you start.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to update the Council on an issue of great concern to many in the community, namely the expansion plans of White Rock Quarry. And I'd like to thank all of the councillors for having taken the time to be briefed on the expansion issue, particularly Councillor Cowley and Councillor Piggott for having met with us in the case of Councillor Piggott, and in the case of Councillor Cowley for having even pursued some media... CEO
Cowley.
CEO Cowley, sorry, yep. for having... Let's not promote him. Let's not, yes, even further. Oh, okay. For having even partake in some media engagements. I'd also like to thank all the supporters of Residents Against White Quarry expansion, many of whom I know will be listening to this deputation and who've helped us increase our voice, so I'm proud to be representing them tonight. So the Residents Against White Rock Quarry group have been formed to oppose the specific expansion plans put forward by White Rock Quarry and not to oppose the quarry in a general sense. We've got supporters from a very wide range of suburbs, mainly motivated by the things I'll be speaking to today, namely, number one, the need to protect the community from the ill effects of silica dust and other mine operation pollution. 2, to protect the hills face view from the Adelaide Plains. 3, to do as much as possible to protect the amenity, including the amazing flora and fauna in the area and the waterways that feed into Third Creek, as well as the groundwater. So if I may, Madam Mayor, begin with the first of those points, dust. But the thing is, it's not just any kind of dust. It's respirable crystalline silica, a known cause of silicosis. According to the Cancer Council, there is no safe level of inhalation of silica dust. What is known is that it doesn't take much to make people really ill and expose them to the risk of silicosis. Now, maintaining protective barriers between the quarry and the community is the minimum that we ask. And we argue that this should be a reasonable expectation of those who represent us. Now, Mount Sky, for example, provides such a barrier between the quarry and the eastern suburbs. Now, our advice from independent engineers Triaxial Consulting shows that dust particles of that kind of silica size can travel 2.7 kilometres in 15 km/h winds. That's 15. So anyone present will well know that our SA Gully wind's a little bit stronger than that. Now, we know of no research on the safety of long-term, low-level ambient exposure of respirable silica dust on communities near such quarries. Now, we believe this is an SA Health issue, and that SA Health should be conducting research on this issue, perhaps with the support of the EPA, DEM, and the quarry, maybe even. And in the meantime, it would be reckless to approve, we think, the removal of protective barriers like Mount Sky, for example. In fact, the quarry hasn't thus far released even their environmental risk assessment publicly. That prevents us from examining its strengths on the aforementioned issues. We want it released publicly for independent review in light of current research on the known risks of respirable silica dust. This is hardly a big ask. Now, just on the issue of pollutants, consider the mine operation times. Currently, in the current MOP and in the proposed expansion, the quarry is allowed to operate 7 days a week for 24 hours a day. So if they ever ramp up their production, this will not only greatly speed up their destruction of the natural protective barriers between them and the community, but also increase noise and light pollution dramatically. Again, providing some protection for the local communities against this realistic possibility is a fair ask, perhaps by providing limits to their operation times. Now, thirdly, on the Hills Face zone issue, a view from the Adelaide Plains. Now, we've got a growing support from the communities at McGill and Morialta, who've realised that Mount Sky forms a significant part of their Hills Face view. So many Adelaideans find the idea of introducing yet another scar across our Hills Face in this day and age unacceptable. Again, by protecting Mount Sky, that beautiful part of the Hills Face, as viewed from the Adelaide Plains, remains unscarred. Now, last but not least, let's consider the environmental amenity. Now, protecting the amenity closest to the community provides a real win-win for many people in our great state. Whether it's bushwalkers or tourists or cyclists, maintaining barriers between the quarry and the community allow people to continue enjoying the outstanding flora and fauna of this region, and again provide some protection for our precious environment. So in summary, we think there's a way we can all get a win-win here. The quarry can still get to do plenty of quarrying close to the city, and the community can have crucial parts of the amenity preserved for its everlasting benefit. So on that note, I finished my deputation, so thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for considering our concerns, and CEO.
Thank you very much. If you just turn your mic off for a moment, just press the speak button. Yep, and I'll just find out if there's anyone who wishes. Councillor Carbine.
Sorry, Your Worship, not a question. I just received an email that people at home couldn't hear that. So, can we check our volume?
Matt, did you hear that question?
Yeah, if the microphones are on, it should have come.
Yes, the microphone was on and mine was off, so not quite sure why. well, we will move on with the questions. Do you have a question, Councillor Carbone?
Actually, they're also saying they can't hear you. So,
Really?
yeah. So,
Gosh.
They
They
could hear the deputation.
could hear the deputation in there?
On live stream, yeah.
Oh, okay. And you're watching on, they're watching it on YouTube? All right. Well, we'll need to move on. So is there anyone who wishes to ask a question, please? Councillor Henschke?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a question for our visitor. Thank you very much. Is your group looking at the new planning and design code and what that's saying about what mines we can have? Because I read there are a number of items A, B, C, D, E, F. You can only do this if. One thing I wondered if you knew was, do you know if that site, that particular hill, contains minerals that are of a quality that there's no practical alternative source available? Do you know anything about that?
I am certain that they have materials of very similar quality in multiple sites across the state. This is not a rare earth, certainly not. It's just road construction rubble and stuff used for building materials, which we have plenty of in this state.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Piggott.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in. I'd like to ask, your group, have you been in contact with Vicky Chapman, for instance, or other people within the state government in regard to this issue?
Yes, we have. We've contacted pretty much everybody there is to contact over this issue. And we have received an email back that our correspondence has been received, but no more at this stage. DEM has very recently got back to us, and we have a representative of the Minister considering organising a meeting. But again, we're yet to hear back from that.
A second question is, I understand you're on ABC and so was Chris, and I just wonder whether there'd been any feedback from that, any reaction you'd got from that.
Oh, indeed there was. That was extremely helpful for us, getting that little spot on Radio 891, a morning's program. We did, in fact, get emails the very next day from a variety of ministers, that is their representatives, their secretaries, saying that they're going to get back to us.
Excellent. You're a busy man.
It was a very good radio report. I listened in most intently. Is there anyone else who wishes to ask a question? All right, well, if there are no more questions, thank you so much for coming in, Mr. Batsiris, and obviously you'll be able to go home and listen to the debate later on this evening in the comfort of your own home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep.
Madam Mayor, just to clarify, we've just had a quick investigation of the sound quality. It appears it's probably a localised issue. We think it's being broadcasted quite well elsewhere.
All right, we have no petitions at 10.4. Now I'll move through the reports and see who wishes to withdraw each of these. 11.1. Councillor Hubel? Oh, you want to move it? Okay, you're happy to move it? All right.
Well, I think we should debate it. Yeah, I'm happy to pull it.
All right. So you're going to withdraw it, Councillor Lemon? Chambers Gully, 11.2. All right, if there's no one who wishes to withdraw it, I seek a motion. Councillor Jones, seconded by Councillor Hubel. Those in favour? Carried. Laurel Avenue Community Garden, Councillor Jones. Regulated and significant tree assistance, Councillor Carbone. Now we have to do the next two, so I'll now move over to 11.7, Era Water appointment, Councillor Hughes. The Quarry at Horsnell Gully, Councillor Piggott. Chief Executive's Officer's report, Councillor Henschke. Mayor's report. You wish to withdraw it, Councillor Davey? Right, so we shall go back now to Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I'm very happy to move the officer's recommendation, but I just didn't want it to go through without acknowledging the enormous amount of work that's been done on this and the options in there, that the work that's been done has put us in very good stead for a flexible approach over the next 10 years that is nothing more than sensational for outcomes for Burnside Council and ratepayers and residents. So I wanted to thank everyone for the work that they've put into this. The workshop was fantastic, really thoughtful and excellent piece of work, and I'm very happy to commend it to you.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. Councillor Hubel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I did want to move this straight up because I think sometimes a good compliment we can pay staff is to move things without detracting from what is put on the paper, and I think what's been put forward is really quite wonderful. But since we're talking about it, look, I think this is just another wonderful initiative that we're working towards, and I'm really proud to be associated with the City of Burnside and this initiative. So thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Right, before I put the motion, I just want to commend the staff as well. I think this is an amazingly innovative work, and it will be held up to all other local government organisations as being exemplary and a new model and very futuristic. And again, as Councillor Hubel said, I'm sure we are all extremely proud of our staff that have brought this document to us. And I had already preempted speaking about it having been passed as I spoke to Dr. Phil before the meeting tonight, that I was already expected that this would get through. So I'm very, very pleased to commend this and seek your vote on this matter. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Yes, I think it requires an applause too. So the next one is Councillor Jones, Laurel Avenue, and you both get an early minute. So thank you very much and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move the officer's recommendation, please. Again, I'd like to thank Barry and his team, Aaron, Kelly, Farley, done a fantastic job in coming up with this design. We've had 2 community working groups. We've had which I think were, they're a new innovation that the council's looking to use on other projects. They were great in terms of getting buy-in from people who are going to be actively involved in the garden and what we're going to do with it. We had the normal community consultation. We had hundreds of responses. The designers have done a fantastic job. I think it's just amazing when you look at a bare piece of land and you think, oh, what can we squeeze in there? What a professional designer can do. And I think they've done a great job. I know there are things that some people think we should do differently. I mean, we've got this debate that was raised today about, whether we need a toilet on site. Some people think we do. What I say is this is not a complete project as of today. Community gardens are organic things, in that they change over time as people go in and they use them and they decide what they want. So I think, and also we have a fixed budget. We've got $200,000 from the Commonwealth as part of their COVID funding. The first dibs on that money is to rip up the main road and make that safe. And so that's going to cost a big chunk of money. And then we obviously have to do something about the traffic because we're turning 2 roads that flow through into 2 cul-de-sacs. So we need to do things so that the rubbish trucks from East Waste can turn around properly and the residents can turn around. So that's going to take another chunk of money. And then what we've got left of the pot is what we're going to spend on getting the community garden off the ground. We won't get everything that's in the design. We'll get what we can. Obviously, I think we focus on the shedding and as many beds as we can get. And then as money becomes available in later budget years, we can add to it. And a lot of this stuff's not that expensive. Like a compostable toilet, I think, is $5,000. So it's something, you know, on the community grant scheme, you can relatively easily put in if people want to have it. You know, people are already gifting things. We've been gifted a large water tank. We've been gifted a piano. We've got a carpenter says he'll come and build things, you know. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done with sweat equity, and I think it's going to be great, and I do hope you'll vote for it.
Thank you. Sorry, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Turnbull, wish to speak?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just endorse everything that Councillor Jones has said? Because reports aren't supposed to be vibrant, but this report captured the enthusiasm for the concept of the community garden. There were so many plans, so many sensible plans. There was such a buzz at those excellent workshops. A lot of community engagement was great. And I really think this is going to be another jewel in Burnside's crown, how we use that terminology, but I think it will be. And congratulations to the working reference group too. And this part 8.5, fundraising activities by future volunteers, they'll be rolling in it. These people are so enthusiastic, they'll be fundraising so much. So, terrific report, thank you, and let's see some action soon. Terrific.
Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Your Worship. I wish to move an amendment. One, that the Council endorses the Laurel Avenue concept design shown at attachment B for the purpose of proceeding to detailed design and construction. And then 2, that a compostable toilet be included in the concept design for stage 2. And in speaking to that, I endorse everything that's been said. I think it's a really fabulous process, and it's been really vibrant. There's considerable community interest in the garden, and it'll be really great to see it all come together and be built by the end of June 2021. However, the one item that I think is necessary is the compostable toilet. This was included I was a member of the reference group. I attended the first meeting, and this was included in the outcomes from that group, but it seems to have been dropped from the concept plans, despite consideration outlined in para 21 on page 55, which does talk about the need for a discussion about the need for a toilet on site. I really do think that... What's wrong?
They've put combustible up there, not compostable. Maybe a little bit more dangerous to use. Oh, what is this? Must be Christmas.
Only Sarah is allowed to giggle.
I would have been Helga too.
I take it was compostable you wanted.
Yes. Sorry, did I sound combustible?
All I knew was to be
Let's move on, or we'll be here until 10:30.
It's such a fabulous... I mean, we celebrate this concept and this garden because it's been a fabulous outcome. I just think this edition, it seems to have fallen off. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend the second reference group working group meeting, but I think if we can factor this in for stage 2, I really think that in terms of for garden users who might be there for a couple of hours, it'd be very useful rather than having to go a couple of 100 metres up the road. Plus also, in the interests of City of Burnside demonstrating our environmental credentials, I think it's a really good way to go. They've got one in their Fern Avenue community garden in Unley, and I know quite a few others have got them. I don't think they're in any way smelly, or I think this sort of garden would be maintained well. I think it would be a really, really good asset, not incredibly expensive. We might even get someone to donate it. But I just think that if we add could add this to the concept plans at this stage, that we can at least factor it in, you know, for some stage in the development. It'd also help with education and promotion of environmental concepts to children on site and to other members of the public too, because we have compostable toilets in lots of our parks and, you know, we use them out camping, but we're only just starting to grasp the principles in the suburbs, and I think this would be a great solution for that site. So hopefully someone will support my motion.
I seek a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Henschke,
Yes,
wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and I just wish to just speak briefly the word compostable toilet. I just wouldn't mind changing, if you don't mind, composting toilet. They're known as composting toilets. Thank you. And just a little extension to that is and reed bed, because when you have a composting toilet, you accompany that with water, potable water for hand washing, and then that water is generally put through a very small reed bed. It's just like a little package that comes together, those two items. It's just but it's getting down to detail, so we may well just leave that if it's getting too complex.
If I may, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I like the sentiment, but this stage of the design, I'm not sure how that concept gets encapsulated in the current design. So I'd prefer if council is happy to leave it with composting toilet, and then our officers will work with that design. And if there are elements that can be incorporated, there will be, but I'd prefer not to be have that dictated as part of the outcome. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott.
I've only got one question, but the first one's about the wording of it. Can I just understand, stage 2 design is the one we are going forward to next? Yes? So it's in there? So is that a clarification rather than a question? Could I then ask a question?
If it's related to the clarification.
It is. My question is to administration, if I could, if I may, why is it not in this design at this point? Was there any reason why it wasn't put in there in the first place? What was the logic of that?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll refer that to Mr. Cant.
Through your worship, there certainly was a bit of discussion in the early reference group meetings with respect to the inclusion of a toilet. Through the community consultation, there were only 3 comments received with respect to a toilet on the site. 2 of them were, we don't want a toilet, and 1 of them was, is there a toilet to be located? The design team and the discussion at the final reference group, when we brought this final concept plan to this stage, was to leave a space available for a toilet should a need arise for one once the garden is up and running. We are very conscious of the budget costs, and we're also conscious that there is a toilet 150 metres away at Tregenza Oval, and we're not convinced that there is going to be a need for a toilet on this particular location, but we do have flexibility to include it if that arises.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Oh, Councillor Hughes?
I just have a question. Is there a toilet at the McGill Community Garden, and was that in...
Through your worship, I haven't been there in a while, but I believe, with confirmation from behind, that there could be one at the church, not at the garden itself.
Yeah, I can confirm that. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? But the church, of course, is just across the road. It's like less than 50 metres away.
Sorry, can I just follow up with a different question, not related to that? But so at some point in the future, we could put a toilet in at any time. There would be a space essentially allocated to that if we wish to do that later. Thank you.
Right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the amendment? Councillor Hubel.
Thank you, Worship. I'll speak against this amendment. Look, I don't feel that what we went to consultation with would be reflected if we included this. I think the fact that the toilet wasn't included in the final plan is a reflection of the feelings of the people at the reference group. And I know that a lot of people would feel a bit blindsided by this being included now. There's quite a lot of people that don't want it there necessarily. And I think the fact that only three people mentioned it, and there was no one complaining that there wasn't a toilet. And I think the fact that the three people that mentioned it, 2 were against it, I think is a fairly, look, it's not a strong consideration. 2 out of 100 and whatever responses. It's not really valid in that sense. But I don't feel that we've got a mandate tonight to include an element which the reference group quite deliberately omitted from what they wanted to do. So I think this would be a bad idea for us to do tonight.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Lemon.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
The survey that went out and the 2 people that said no, they'd rather not have it, do we know if they are close or adjacent residents? Do we know that?
No, I don't have the particulars of those particular responses.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak or ask a question? All right, I shall go back to Councillor Davey to sum up.
Thanks, Your Worship. Can't I speak to this? I can't speak to the amendment.
Yes, I just have to put it to the vote. So all those in favour of the amended motion, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? The amendment is lost. So we now go back to the original motion. And is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All right, then I shall go back to Councillor Jones.
Thank you, everyone. I won't speak for long. I'm sure we'd all like to finish at a reasonable hour. I hope you will support the motion.
Right, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Next one is Regulated and Significant Tree Assistance Policy, Councillor Carbone. And before you go, Aaron and Kelly, thank you for all of your work this year on all of these different projects. And if I don't see you again, I wish, on behalf of all of us here, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And just while I have a moment, Councillor Davis is on his way. He'll be here very shortly. So now you're ready to roll on, Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try and keep this equally short. I think I speak for the vast majority that we are all in favour of protecting our tree canopy, if anything, increasing it. We are all in favour of protecting the thing that makes Burnside, Burnside, which of course is our trees. But of course, there's only so much we can do ourselves as a council when it comes to our parks, our gardens and our streets. The biggest chunk of land in Burnside, of course, belongs to our residents. And as I've said before in this council chamber a few times, I'm a big believer that if we want to take this tree canopy seriously when it comes to private land, we need to do more to encourage our residents to keep their trees. We all benefit. Every significant tree benefits the whole block or the whole street, or maybe even the whole suburb. We all see it from our front door, we all see it from our back door. So we all benefit from these trees. But the cost is borne by only one person. So communal benefit surely calls for communal cost sharing. Every time I get a phone call from a resident who's seeking my help in removing a tree sometimes, I put it back on them. What is it going to take for you to keep the tree? For this conversation to end right now. And they might mention something. If you dig a little deeper, it'll be a limb that's going over a bedroom or something. So get into the nitty-gritty, and it's a circuit breaker. You put it to the resident, look, I understand your concerns with the tree. If we go 50-50, would that end the concerns? And it always, always does. So we need to take this seriously. We need to do everything possible we can, and we need to share the costs as much as we can with our residents.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I seek a seconder. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I endorse all that Councillor Carbone has outlined, and I think it's all pretty straightforward. So I'm happy to support this and second it tonight, and I hope everybody else will.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Turnbull.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a few weeks ago, my elderly neighbour was pressured by her new neighbour to prune a significant gum tree. She didn't know about the Tree Assistance Fund, and I didn't know till after the event, so she paid $1,000 plus. My question is, can she claim in retrospect? The other question is, when will the increased funding be available for residents, and how will residents be made aware of this increased funding model?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The short answer is we won't fund things in retrospect.
Right.
Policy doesn't provide for that because the policy is very prescriptive about the process that needs to be gone through to get the funds. But I might just refer the balance of the question to Mr. Can about how we're looking to promote. Oh, sorry, Mr. Cooper. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chris. If Council approves this resolution this evening, then $30,000 will be added to the $5,000 that was in the original budget, and that funding will become immediately available from tomorrow morning. And we have a variety of different methods to promote that through social media, through focus, and yeah, they're the primary forms. We've also got access to the Herald if we needed to do that too. So we will engage on that. We do have 3 applications that have been in the waiting, so we will go back and touch base with those to ensure that if the work hasn't started, they will be able to apply for funds. They were put on hold basically because the budget had been expended.
Thank you.
Councillor Henchy.
Thank you, Mayor. With the promotion activities, the question is, would it perhaps cover a situation like this, that one has a native tree in their garden, doesn't look like much, sometimes they look a bit scruffy and people think, oh, well, it's just a native tree of some sort, but in fact it is listed, a variety, and an adjacent neighbour might not realise that. So how do we raise awareness with a community at large, neighbours, that yes, that tree next door that's overhanging my garden may well be a significant tree or regulated variety, and I better not just trim branches off of it because they're overhanging in my garden. I wondered whether there was a way that we could raise awareness with residents about that type of situation.
Thank you for your question. The best way of educating the community is either through yourselves or via an FAQ. We'd be happy to put an FAQ up on the website, and also through future focus publications.
Can I point out also there is a brochure that you can collect in the foyer of the council area that is called Significant and Regulated Trees and the Law. So those little brochures are really very useful too. If you've got a resident who asks you questions about it, then, you know, have a few of those at home and give them to people when they ask you, because that's really a really good resource of all the information that's available.
Yes, I have a question, if I may. Getting back to Councillor Turnbull's resident.
Apologise.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Apologies, Councillor Lemon. My question is to the administration relating to this policy, specifically in the future. We did a pretty amazing workshop recently in the heritage space, and one of the ideas from that was actually doing something legal with our regulated and significant trees that are of significant, nature in the city of Burnside. Wonder whether or not in a future review of this policy, whether or not the cost of legally protecting that tree on private land might be something that could be incorporated in the tree assistance fund, such as covering the legal costs for a resident, or partial or portion of the legal costs for a resident to put the tree on the title as an easement with the city of Burnside, or putting the tree under a land management agreement with the city of Burnside. I just wondered whether or not those sort of options would be applicable, or it might be something separate that we might have to entertain.
Through the Mayor, yeah, that's certainly something we could have a look at. I propose that the administration take that away first of all, and check out what we can and can't do, and then by all means happy to bring it back as part of a workshop for future discussion.
Now it's Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I have a question, and it relates to the policy. It says that the council to access this fund, eligibility must be sought from council prior to work commencing. Taking into account Councillor Turnbull's neighbour, that she raised the issue of this person having to trim the tree, can you tell me how long it'll take for approval to be given? Because there will be times, and probably always, that eligibility they'll need to know straight away. Like, is it going to take months? Is it going to take weeks? I mean, if you're being harassed by a neighbour because your limbs are actually overlooking their garage, you don't want that every day while you wait 6 weeks or 12 weeks for the council to get back to you with a nod. So can I get a sense of how long this takes?
Through the Mayor, very much depends on the information that's provided as part of the application. If the application is complete and contains all of the arborist advice that's required, then it can be turned around fairly quickly. And I'm talking within 1 to 2 weeks, we can assess that application. It also depends on whether, if it's a significant tree, that obviously has to go through a process to make sure it's not tree damaging activity. But if I look back at the applications that have gone through in the last 6 months, most of them have actually been paid within 1 month, and that's on the proviso that all of the application is complete, the assessment's been made, the approval's been given, the work's then carried out, and we've received confirmation from the arborist that the work's been undertaken in accordance with the agreement. So quite a quick turnaround.
I need to move to Councillor Hughes, then I'll come back. Okay. Councillor Hughes?
I just had a question. It was mentioned that there were 3 applications that were submitted back, given the funds had run out. Wouldn't necessarily be able to retrospectively go back, but if they'd already sought approval but we just didn't have funding, would it fit under the policy that they would still be paid?
My comments were related to the physical completion of the work. So if the application is in and they haven't completed the works or started the actual physical trimming of the tree, then they're still eligible to be. We'll consider them under this policy.
So even if we have given them approval, but we didn't have funds. And they just didn't, like, they've gone, oh, well, I need to get this because it's either dangerous or overhanging or something, I want to do it now. We wouldn't retrospectively go back and...
Through Madam Mayor, I'll just seek clarification, Mr Cooper. My understanding is we hadn't processed the applications due to the lack of funds, but I could be wrong.
Yes, through the Mayor, the policy is very clear that the work and the grant funding can only be approved prior to that work taking place. So we can certainly go back to those applications that have been turned down where the work hasn't taken place, but the policy is very specific on that at the moment.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Lemon.
Yes, this is a follow-up from my original question. The answer was that it's a month from when the work takes place to when payment is made, but that wasn't what I asked. What I asked was how long does it take for council to give people the nod to have that done? Is that so that the approval goes, the request comes into council and the stuff is paid, is that a 4-week turnaround and the work's done in between time? Is that a 4-week turnaround? Or is there two separate issues here? One is the work gets done and the payment's made retrospectively after the homeowners actually paid the arborist. So what's the whole process beforehand?
Yep, so if I may, Madam Mayor, and if I heard Mr Cooper correctly, I think he mentioned that if the paperwork is correct when it comes into us, on history, there can be as short as 1 week turnaround to get that approval to allow you to do the works. Yep.
Councillor Lemon.
I have another question, but I don't want to jump the queue.
I don't have anyone on the queue. Councillor Davis has just put his hand up, so...
We'll have another question.
No, Councillor Davis, you can speak or ask a question and then I'll go back to Councillor Lemon.
No, I'll wait.
No, that's the rules.
I don't have a question at this time.
Or a comment to make.
Yeah.
All right, then Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. We've heard a lot about the correct documentation coming in for this to be an efficient process, and my question is, most forms, particularly government forms, are notoriously difficult for elderly people, for people that don't have English as a first language, or for people that are stressed to fill out. Have we these forms that need to be filled out, and probably every box needs to be ticked, and I'm the worst offender when it comes to actually filling out forms. You do it online and you can't proceed because you've failed to do something that you need to do. I'd just like to be assured that these forms aren't 15 pages long with sub-clauses. They're logical, they're easy. Yep. Little old ladies that don't speak English as a first language can easily fill them out. Can you assure me that that is the case?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll refer to Mr Cooper. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, yes, I can assure you the application form is very easy to complete. It's 2.5 pages long with fields to complete, so it does guide you through that process. We are talking about fairly significant amounts of ratepayers' money going out in grant funding, so we do have to make sure that from a governance point of view we have ticked all those boxes. I'm sure we wouldn't want that any other way, but once those are done, and by all means we're able to help people if they do struggle with that, then we can process the application.
Councillor Davis.
Let's just say that there's a tree and the resident's concerned about it. Could they use this funding to seek an arborist report to essentially recommend its removal, which ultimately recommends its removal?
Through Madam Mayor, just clarifying, and it's on private land?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. Mr Cooper?
Through the Mayor, no, the resident is not able to do that. This grant funding only applies to the work that's undertaken on the tree.
Right.
The arborist report is a prerequisite to getting the application.
Can I ask another question?
No, because
oh, well, try and remember that answer and then come back. Yeah, see how you go.
Would it be difficult to get a database of all the people who've got Well, I take it we don't have a database of all the people who've got significant regulated trees on their property. Is that something that any council has done? Is that beyond our abilities, do you think?
If I may, Madam Mayor, just while Mr Cooper is working on that answer, Farley has just messaged me and said that one of the requirements,
Hang on, one person speaking so that everyone can hear, both here and at home.
one of the requirements of our
Councillor Lemon.
Disability and Access and Inclusion Plan is that all our forms are reviewed to make them easy to fill out.
Now, Councillor Cooper? Councillor Mr Cooper?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, we have got some information already. That came from the development plan, so we do have some records of significant trees from that. We were also hopeful that the information we get through this process would add to that database too, but it's clearly a massive, massive job to maintain that database. So it's not perfect, and we've got a long way to go to get anywhere near having a full database. Barry?
I'll also add just one thing to that as well. The recent LiDAR work that we are doing across the entire city will assist us with identifying large trees, in particular canopy coverage. That's still in the early stages, and we'll be able to monitor that over time.
You've played the game already. The issue is I have no one else has raised their hand. I have nothing on my list. So, Councillor Piggott, you can ask the question. No, you didn't.
Order. At the end of my thing, I said, can I ask another question? And you said, no, you can't, because you can only ask one question. Then it went to Councillor Piggott. Now you're saying I didn't have another question. I absolutely put my name on the list.
I'm willing to stand aside for my...
All right, Councillor...
Childish colleague, you're the one who wanted to proceed.
Excuse me, but I don't want people playing games with this. We have a serious... I'm not. I'm saying that you are. But if we're going to do this properly, then we don't have, oh, well, I won't ask now, I'll ask later, because that's just going to hold up the whole process. So I ask people to be honest and reasonable about using this. If you have a question, you ask one question. Then it moves to the next person. If I haven't got the name on the list, on my list, then it goes back, then I don't move on, okay? So I'm quite happy now. Councillor Davis, no more mucking around anybody. Councillor Davis, you have your question, and then Councillor Piggott has a subsequent question. And I'm not having a go at anybody in particular, I'm just saying we need to clarify this. I know some people might not like it, but this is what we agreed to and this is the process we're using. All right, let's go.
Realising this process. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the response to my last question was that it couldn't be used for identifying, like knocking down trees. Is that right? The policy. I think that's right. I'll just remember, this is not my question, just recalling what the answer was.
I'll just confirm that that is the case, because tree assistance is about keeping a tree, not removing a tree.
Okay. So my follow-up question to my previous question was, under 6.1.1, the objective is the identification of issues associated with a regulated tree. Could an issue not be it's dangerous and should be removed entirely? So wouldn't that, I disagree, wouldn't that fall under the policy? Because you're not going to know what the arborist report comes back with until it comes back.
I would say, while we're waiting governance answer, I would say that if that was the direction that the arborist said this tree is dangerous and you need to remove it, then they wouldn't actually qualify for a tree assistance grant because they are not keeping the tree. And if they have been advised in that way, probably from an insurance policy, they would be best to take that advice.
I think...
and then they would have to put in an application to the CAP in order to be able to remove that tree. So there's another process involved.
So the answer
is
yes?
No. If I may, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I can refer Councillor Davis to 6.2.5,
yes,
which reads, eligible works are works that maintain the health and safety of the tree. Tree damaging activity in the form of tree removal will not be eligible for reimbursement of these funds.
Is there anyone else, or can I ask a follow-up
No,
question?
Councillor Piggott is next, and then...
I put up my hand now after Councillor Piggott.
Look, my follow-up question, on reflection, is probably, I probably do know the answer, so perhaps I erred in actually needing a follow-up question, but it was really the fact that, just clarified that the work that Mr. Cant spoke of wouldn't necessarily get us a direct ability to talk to who owned the trees. It's actually in regard to the canopy. It's not, you know, we couldn't send a letter out to everybody at the moment because we know they've got significant, and say, look, we're up for this, you should know about it. That's what I guess, but that wouldn't get me closer to that, would it? Is that fair to say?
Through your worship, that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
We will have an idea of where they are. However, that wouldn't give us a direction to be able to contact them directly.
No. Thank you.
Now, Councillor Davis, you have another question.
Following on from my last question, the administration said that tree damaging activity wouldn't be covered under the policy, but my question was, in fact, could they get an arborist report to recommend the removal of the tree out of our fund, not the works to actually damage the tree?
Through Madam Mayor, Mr. Cooper.
Because it's identification.
Through the Mayor, I refer you back to the section that Mr. Cowley referred to earlier. It specifically talks about the form of tree removal. So the arborist report may recommend that a tree is removed.
Yeah.
That will not be eligible for any grant funding under this scheme.
Okay. I guess I have a follow-up question. So I put
I think we've had enough questions. I'm going to speak to the motion. I think this is a great motion. We all know that our trees on private property are under threat. We all know that there are positive externalities from trees on private property. We all benefit from them. We've heard before that, you know, this is a policy where poor people in Burnside subsidise rich ones. But I don't think that's the case. We all financially benefit through our house prices from these lovely trees that people have on their property. And, you know, during the GFC, people will have heard the term privatising gains and socialising losses. I think what we have with these trees on private property is we're socialising gains and we're privatising losses in terms of the costs of maintaining them. And I think those of us, I don't have significant or regulated trees on my property, and if we have to make a contribution to people who do so that they keep them, I think that's money well spent. You know, frankly, if it was up to me, I would offer for the council to maintain all significant and regulated trees on private property. I think that's ultimately what we're going to get to. That is the only way we're going to keep these trees if the council does it ourselves. That's not what we're proposing tonight, but I think ultimately that's the way we'll go, because we've got the expertise, we've got people maintaining our own, you know, regulated and significant trees. The economies of scale are there, the expertise are there to do it ourselves and do it as a service to ratepayers. But that's probably not the debate for tonight. But I think this is a step in the right direction, and I hope everyone will support it.
Thank you. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. What he said.
Now, Councillor Davis, you wish to ask another question, or are you speaking?
No, I'd like to ask another question. So following up from my last question, thank you for the answers. And I've seen eligibility, it's works, not necessarily getting arborist report. Would it be appropriate to move the word identification in 611? And then just have it as a rectification of issues? I know it's taken a long time to get here. Can I move an amendment?
Mr. Cooper, would you like to answer that question first for us, please?
Yes, through the Mayor. No objections from me to removing that. It probably makes it a little bit clearer, actually. It's to do with the actual work that's undertaken rather than the identification of.
I'd like to move an amendment. that the words in item 611, that the words identification and be deleted. Unless the mover and seconder want to adopt it.
You said words, identification and what?
And.
Just
The words identification and. Unless the mover and seconder want to adopt it.
Can I ask the mover, would you be willing to just make this an adjustment rather than a full amendment, and it would save a lot of time and a lot of hassle? So you're happy to agree with that? And the seconder was Councillor Davey. Are you happy with that too? Okay. So rather than an amendment, we're just going to change the original motion by adding that to the original motion.
Cool. Speak to the motion
Thank
now, if I could.
Yes, you may.
Oh, I have to put my hand up. Am I next?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I'm very happy to support this. I think my greatest fear in terms of this policy is that there could be a perception or an abuse of it where we essentially fund the removal of it. And I think that we're walking a difficult line here, is because tree damaging activity by an arborist's kind of point of view might be, well, let's remove an entire limb that perhaps shouldn't be there. Or is dangerous in some way. And so it's not damaging the tree, but it's assisting its health. But they're essentially, now we're paying to partly remove a tree. And I think that that's the threat of it. Under the eligibility, the policy talks about works, but in the objective it talked about the identification of. So my understanding would be now from this policy that an individual would need to identify the risks by obtaining an arborist report, and then say, well, this is what I then want to do, particularly is to improve the safety of the tree or improve the health of the tree second. And so it's kind of that two-step process. And so what I was concerned about is that there be a perception that we're instead funding the removal of significant trees and enabling people to get that work, because an arborist report, like a lawyer, will prosecute a point that you pay them for to a degree. And there are different shoes for different occasions. So look, I'm more than happy to support this. I think this is good. I know it took a long time to get there, but thanks for bearing with me with this line of inquiry.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, just before, Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very quickly, a question. The section in the policy, I should have asked this before, but the section in the policy that in regards to anyone damaging a tree is being deleted. So am I correct to assume that was all going to be covered in the PDI Act? The ability for council to fine for, say, a builder cutting a limb off a tree?
Through Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Mr Cooper.
Through the Mayor, sorry, Councillor Henschke, could you just repeat the start of that question? Which bit's been deleted?
The last section of the policy in regards refers to the tree damaging activities.
What's the section number, Councillor Henschke?
Yeah, just getting there. It's page Schedule 1. Schedule 1, page 88 of the agenda papers.
Yep. Yes, through the Mayor, as it shows in point 15 of the report, that schedule has been deleted because it contains relevant legislation that's documented elsewhere. So to make sure the policy is always up to date, it's not required to be repeated in the policy.
Yep, thank you very much for clarifying.
Right, I'll just remind everybody that we were earlier this year commended and awarded being a tree city of the world. And so anything we have to do with trees needs to keep that in mind. And I think Councillor Jones, you spoke with a ditto from Councillor Cornish about the importance of trees, and I'm sure all of our residents, or most of our residents, are keen to keep that in mind as well. So I shall put it back to Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm very proud of the Council tonight for their support for this very, very important policy. I applaud the ambition of Councillor Jones. Maybe that's a discussion for another day or another year or another decade maybe. But I do appreciate it, and if it was a motion, of course, I would second it. But I suppose a few people have asked tonight about marketing and getting the message out there, and I suppose all I can ask us all to do collectively is to add support to what administration are doing, putting it on your own social media pages every time you're talking to a resident and they have a significant tree or the words trees even come up, mention it to them. And like I mentioned before, you know, probably about once a year, twice a year, I do get a call from a resident who oddly enough asks for my help to remove a tree, and I cut it off at the knees right there and then with, of course, saying, look, why don't you inquire about this assistance program? Because it stops a big issue right there and then becoming a much larger issue. So thank you for support tonight.
All those in favour? Against? Carried. We're moving now to a whole range of appointments of elected members to different panels. The first one is the elected members to the Council Assessment Panel. So I am seeking nominations. Councillor Davis, you have a nomination?
I nominate Councillor Lemon.
You accept the nomination, Councillor Lemon? Yes. Councillor Turnbull?
I nominate Councillor Dawes.
Do you accept that nomination, Councillor Dawes? Are there any further nominations, please, for the CAP? Thank you. Yep, I get one. All right, failing there being any further nominations, you need to put down one name on the... Yes, Councillor Dawes, a question?
I would like to explain why I'm...
Oh yes, we normally do that because there are funds applicable. Yes, sorry, we do need to have each person speak. So unless anyone's got a problem with it, I'll go alphabetically, starting with Councillor Dawes and then Councillor Lemon. Is that all right with everybody?
I'm happy to go alphabetically.
Okay, Councillor Dawes, off you go. And then you will be required to put one name on the piece of paper.
Thank you, Mayor. I thank Councillor Turnbull for the nomination. I do view this as a whole of council matter. And what I mean by whole of council is that we must ensure in this council a wide cross-section of us have experience in development matters, as this is where our residents have the most concerns. I know that certainly happens in our ward. I have no criticism of Councillor Lemon's work this year, and I have no criticism of Councillor Hensky's work the previous year. I just believe that in the ideal world, and to ensure the best governance possible, we should have a different elected member representative on the panel each year over the 4-year term of the council. I'm not saying that should be mandatory. It's just an objective which I think would broaden the development experiences of people around this table. Personally, one of the reasons that I did nominate for council back in 2018 was I had a continuing interest in advocating for the appropriate developments within the city, and that was one of the reasons why I put my name forward. For the past 2 years, I've shown an active interest in understanding the nuances of the new planning reforms, attended community meetings, and listened in on Zoom workshops galore. My past life included project managing many facility developments in the sporting world. I do see a CAT nomination as different to other committee nominations. For example, unless you have an interest in finance or accounting, I wouldn't recommend nominating for the Audit Committee, for instance. For CAT, I do see great value in Council expanding and enhancing the development expertise of its members. For your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dawes. Now, Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I seek a second term as your member for CAP. I spent time on CAP and DAP in the previous council and the council before that. So I do have a reasonable degree of experience sitting on that panel as an elected member. And in fact, in my first council, there were 3 of us that sat on the development assessment panel. It is an important job for a councillor to sit on that panel, because whilst you sit there because you are a councillor, the decisions you make need to be relevant to our development plan. And so it's a very difficult balancing act for looking at the overall city and its residents, and you need to pick your battles. It's not a cut and dried sort of committee, in that there are, as Councillor Dawes said, nuances to it, and you need to pick your battles, because there is that very delicate balance between saying that tree cannot come down, that heritage building cannot come down, and we don't want that hideous monstrosity built on one of our wonderful premier streets, or spending $500,000 or more in the courts, where we always lose. We haven't won an ERD court yet in terms of stopping those sorts of developments. The ERD court always goes towards the developers. So having experience in this area is a really, really important thing, because you can pick your battles. You can also spend time in that panel convincing your other panellists, who are all accredited professionals, and in fact they have to do accreditation with the state government now, convincing them that really the residents need to take precedence here over our development plan. In terms of myself, in the last 12, and I've put in a submission to every single planning consultation since I took office in 2010, and they have been legion. Like the Act changed in 2016. Just this year, I put in a submission in February this year. I also put in a submission in September this year to the Legislative Review Committee, and I'll be putting in a submission before the 18th of December, after we've had our workshop on the 9th, because I want to see what's going to happen, so to see what nuances we get. So, and these are all matters of public record, and you can go and have a look at the submissions I've done. It is, to actually be a member of CAP, there is a degree of focus, and there's an enormous amount of work if you want to do it properly. The reading is enormous. You have to go and visit the places. I'm willing to do that. I know how much work needs to be done to do it properly, and I actually think I've done a good job for the council in the last 12 months. So I hope you support me.
All right, everyone's clear. One name on the yellow piece of paper, and Karishma, if you'd like to come and collect them, thank you.
Councillor Dawes. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Dawes with a flower. Councillor Lemon. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Lemon. Councillor Lemon. Councillor Lemon. Councillor Dawes. I'm going to keep some of these comments for posterity. Councillor Lemon. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Lemon. 6 votes for Councillor Lemon. 7 votes for Councillor Dawes. So I declare Councillor Dawes' name included in the resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon, is this the right way to go? Can I ask if Councillor Lemon wishes to be the deputy member? Or do we have to go through the voting again?
So, Madam Mayor, if no one else wishes to nominate, we're more than entitled to pose that question to Councillor.
So is there anyone who wishes to nominate as the deputy member? If not, then I will declare that Councillor Dawes is appointed as a member and Councillor Lemon as a deputy member. And now we need a motion, yes. I'm just filling in the gaps for the motion. So now I need somebody to move the motion. Councillor Piggott, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Jones.
Sorry, Your Worship, given these are paid positions, should the members remove themselves from the chamber?
For?
The vote.
Should have. Should have removed themselves, yes.
We haven't voted.
But we haven't voted yet. Oh, sorry, for the vote. Yeah, not for the count, for the vote. Yes, okay, yeah. So if you wouldn't mind both leaving the chamber. Councillor Lemon? Thank you. Right. Oh, I haven't got the microphone on. Those against? Carried.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, councillors. So, vote for me for the following 11 reasons. I've got them numbered.
25 seconds each reason.
Yeah. So, I've only been on the board for 1 year. It's been a very quick year, and it's been a very weird year. So it hasn't given me a lot of time. I'm only just now getting my head around it. That's number one. Number two is I have a deep passion for rubbish collection. I am heavily involved in it. I like it. I'm very, very interested in it. Number three is I even got up at 4 a.m. one morning and went for a ride in a rubbish truck. So I could see firsthand what it's like and talking to the drivers about the issues they face and getting a deep and personal connection with the company and the issues. Number four, I've attended, of course, all board meetings. Number five, I was involved in the biobag rollout at Foodland Freeville, and including getting to know the biobag company and going to their factory and learning more about the product, because I think that is a key to driving green waste. Number 6, I've instigated meetings with other retailers regarding the biobag rollout to get them onto the shelves or on the rolls. Number 7, I have as you know, a passion for a very fair system with our rubbish collection, i.e. apartment buildings. Number 8, I have a deep personal passion for boosting our green waste. That is number 1, 2 and 3 on the objectives. Number 9, I have been involved in some...
Councillor Davis, I think you're not showing appropriate respect. You've been talking throughout Councillor Carbone's speech, and I don't think that's appropriate.
No, neither do I. Number 9, I have been involved with a couple of school reports and a couple of university reports, okay, making my time available to speak to students. Number 10, I have a good working relationship with our new chairperson, who also happens to be my neighbour. And number 11, the last one, and if you remember any of them, remember this one. I am the only elected member who's brave enough to put on a full suit and jump in a bin.
What an embarrassment.
Oh.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Carbone, for your service to the board. Look, my 2 years on council, I've been deputy member of a subsidiary board. In the first year it was EHAR, and this year it has been East Waste. And quite frankly, I like what I'm seeing, but I want to step up to the big leagues, as it were. So look, I don't have a prepared remarks as such. But look, I keenly believe, as do a lot of us, that proper waste management is one of the really big forward-facing strategies that we should be engaging with quite heavily to help with mitigating climate change, which you all know is an absolute passion of mine. So I'm hoping that I can bring some real climate passion to that board. And look, one thing I will reference, Councillor Carbone mentioning the issues faced by drivers. Look, I haven't been out in a truck, but I have chased trucks down the street in my pyjamas, and I believe I may be one of those issues. So just trying to keep it light. We're all a bit on edge this evening, so I seek your support. Thank you.
Right, one name, of course, on the pink piece of paper.
Councillor Carbone, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Carbone. So the name Councillor Carbone will be inserted into the motion. Thank you.
And can I ask Councillor Hubel, are you willing to be the deputy? Thank you. Now, apparently, neither of you have to leave the room during the...
Can I nominate Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for nominating me. I'd be very happy to serve on Council's Audit Committee, a fresh face. I haven't been on it for quite a few years. I think it's since in my second term on Council. I've been an elected member on the City of Burnside Council for almost 18 years and have significant experience in and understanding of the business of Council, its financial and governance systems, its risk management and legal requirements and systems, and how these all work together to oversight and review the city's organisational objectives and responsibilities. My previous career and position in state government involved detailed knowledge and understanding of effective audit functions and risk management as these applied in government and industry. I ask that you support my nomination, and if successful, I'll work to ensure Council's financial and governance objectives and systems are scrutinised and implemented responsibly. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you for my nomination. I would like to continue in office for another year. I think I've got a lot of direct, relevant experience. Obviously, I'm a chartered accountant. I've worked in practice and commerce for 30 years, so I do think that I'm able to scrutinise the financial aspects. I think the key unique selling proposition for me is that where I work, which is a large government business enterprise, I'm on the other side of the fence. So I'm doing what Martin and Karishma are doing. So I'm a kind of, if you elected me, I'm a kind of poacher turned gamekeeper in that, you know, everything they're doing or thinking about, I've done or seen. So you won't get anything past me. I can ask the right questions to scrutinise things. Yes, I have finance, but I also have understanding of risk. I have understanding of safety. I mean, you may not know, but the City of Burnside lost time injury frequency rate is 10 times higher than ASC's. I mean, ASC, we've got hundreds of trade employees working in a shipyard, and yet the council's lost time injury frequency rate is 10 times higher. I think I can add perspectives that will assist the council, you know, in addressing matters like that. So I won't carry on forever. That's why I think you should vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pickett.
Yeah, look, thank you for the nomination. Look, I am keen to be on the Audit Committee. I have been there before. The reasons I feel I am a good candidate, twofold. One is I too bring the fact that I am a qualified chartered accountant. I do work in the finance area, not to the extent of a submarine corporation, but every day of my working life. And the other reason I think is that I feel that the way I operate at council and the way I operate on committees is that I do the work. I actually make sure I put the time in and make sure I'm a positive and proactive contributor to the council and committees that I serve on, and I feel that's the attribute that you want from the people you have in the audit committee. So I would seek your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Just another reminder, 2 names on your piece of paper, on your blue piece of paper, please.
Mayor, I just want to make sure that in the motion about the audit committee, we did agree to appoint Emma. That was in that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just have a few key points to make, and I guess there's no point sugarcoating it. Era Water is still in financial difficulty, and I think we're all aware of the position that that Era Water is in. Sorry, I'm moving the motion. Yeah. So the report that's come through obviously puts forward a recommendation for a new independent chair. And I'm certainly in support of that as one of the board members. I think it's a great opportunity to get some fresh eyes there, and really I think we're in a critical position where we've faced significant financial difficulties with the SA water price decreasing by 18% in the middle of the year. And I think really someone who could come in and see things from a fresh perspective would certainly be helpful. I think we need to remember that obviously each council has their own appointee, and this is an opportunity to bring someone in external who will bring some great skills. I think you've all read the CVs, and obviously this person has gone through a rigorous process by all three CEOs who were part of that assessment committee. So I thank them for their time, and I think to get all of them to agree obviously really says something about this candidate. So I will certainly be in support of the officer's recommendation, and I encourage you also to consider the merits of a fresh new independent chair. Thank you.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Lemon. Is there anyone who wishes to... Councillor Turnbull, you wish to speak?
Yes, please. Could I please have clarification on an issue? What are the implications of this position should Era Water not remain in council ownership for this period?
Through Madam Mayor, if the entity ceases to be in council ownership, the subsidiary will therefore cease to exist, and therefore there will be no positions, so that it becomes no longer a legal subsidiary.
He loses his job, basically.
Correct.
Thank you.
Actually, I shouldn't say that. Potentially, with the chair, yes is the answer.
Are there any further questions or debate? Councillor Piggott.
Yeah, look, I'd like to support this motion and support the words of Councillor Hughes. This subsidiary is not getting on its feet at the speed we would like, but I do feel it will get on its feet. But one of the key things to do that, I feel, is to get a fresh direction at the top. It doesn't have a lot of governance in terms of numbers in governance. It's got a relatively small board, a normal size audit committee, a staff of one or perhaps two now. And so this person is quite key. And while Brian Jenkins, the previous chair, took it through its development through quite a tough time of development, to the point where it is delivering water to councils and is actually selling water collecting water and selling water. The key will be what happens next with it, and it does need a fresh direction. Looking at Mr. Matthewson's CV that we were provided, and I agreed 3 CEOs selecting him out of the pack. I think both reasons. I feel he does stack up for the job. I don't know him personally, but based on the CV. And so I very much feel that Burnside should support this motion and put him into place.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Cornish.
Actually, a question, if I may, Your Worship. Given I have of the understanding that the City of Norwood last night moved a motion for a different person, how does the stalemate between all the regional subsidiary constituent councils play out in this regard?
Through Madam Mayor, on face value in the articles, it talks about having unanimous position, but I think in this position, one will seek further legal advice. But I'd certainly encourage council, regardless of how Norwood, Pattinson and Peters has voted, I think we should vote very clearly on what our preferred position is. And, well, obviously we'll shortly understand where Walkerville's landed, and then we'll embrace that conversation.
You still reserving your right, Councillor Lemon? Okay. Councillor Carbone?
Question to the CEO, if I may. So do we know when Walkerville is voting on this issue, and have staff endorsed a candidate yet?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My understanding is that Walkerville will be voting along the same lines as City of Burnside, or that certainly is the recommendation that we put before them. And I think Walkerville meet in the last week of this month.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Then I think it needs to be you, Councillor Lemon. Oh, you don't wish to speak at all then? Okay. All right. I'll move. It's Councillor Hughes. No, I know that, but I'm going back there. But I wasn't quite sure if Councillor Davey was about to put a hand up. That's all. Only hesitation there. Okay.
I will just briefly raise one point. I thank Councillor Cornish for bringing that to our attention. I guess I didn't want people to come in with, appreciating that Norwood potentially have voted on this differently to the officer's recommendation. I think we'll have to see where the balls lie after this vote and see what happens after that. But I would really encourage people to see this as an opportunity for a new direction, some fresh eyes, and I think regardless of what the other councils do, we have an opportunity to make the decision that we feel is best for Irra Water. And I think it's really in a critical position where it could, it will be helpful to get someone fresh in at this point in time.
Right, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. I'm sure they will get the message. Well, you could actually, because it's, someone could change their mind, technically. So, the good division's been called. Please stand if you voted in favour. And I'll go around the names. I'll start over here. Councillor Henschke, Councillor Cornish, Hughes, Davey, Piggott, Davis, Lemon. Oh, you're putting initials in. Okay, Carbone, Turnbull, Dawes, Jones and Hubel. And against? No one. Thank you. Next one is Councillor Piggott, the quarry at Horsnell Gully.
Thank you, and I have a relatively elaborate motion instead of the recommendation, which I would like to just tweak a little from the one I did put onto people's desks, if I may do that first. Yep, is that okay? I just want 4.3 to read that the requirement that the proposed new plant set further into the quarry and of contemporary standards, comma, and the proposed truck washing station are constructed within 3 years of the approval of the MOP. Do you want me to read the motion, Lady Mayor?
I think you need to, because people who are at home have the old agenda and therefore they haven't got any of this information.
Understand, yep. And as a preamble to this, most of this comes out of the tour yesterday and basically what the person giving the deputation earlier, which is sneaking a bit in before my 3-minute start. So, 1, receive and note that Council receive and note the report. 2, recognise the economic importance of White Rock Quarry, and the professional approach undertaken by the owners of the private mine, Hanson Construction Materials Pty Ltd, Support the issuing of an updated mine operation plan, an MOP, for the operation of the quarry, recognising it represents a one-off opportunity to improve its operation to the benefit of all parties. 4, request that the CEO engages with the member for Bragg, the Honourable Vicky Chapman MP, to obtain her assistance to achieve the following in respect to any approved MOP proposed for the White Rock Quarry. 1, no approval given beyond stage 3 due to the impact on the area known as Mount Skye, which forms a natural barrier for the quarry and includes significant natural flora and fauna habitat. 2, investigation of the current content of dust generation to the suburb of Skye to ascertain the appropriateness of the level of silica relative to public health. 3, requirement that the proposed new plant set further into the quarry and of contemporary standards and the proposed truck washing station are constructed within 3 years of the approval of the MOP. And 4, allowable operating hours be changed from the current 24/7 to appropriate hours with due consideration for neighbouring residents and practical use of the quarry, with operation outside these hours for exceptional circumstances require specific approval. 5, the Council continues to work with the relevant departments of state government and Hanson Construction Materials P2 Ltd to achieve the above outcomes. And 6, that Council requests the Department of Energy for Energy and Mines to make the environmental risk assessment for the proposed MOP publicly available. So in my 3 minutes, a lot of us did the tour last night. You heard the deputation today. I've given you a sort of a summary, albeit handwritten, on your tables that talk about the major issues in play. And what this seeks to do is to engage with our local member, the Deputy Premier, to see how she might assist us and our residents to achieve the issues being addressed. And the issues are, one is that Mount Skye, which is the last phase, phase 4, effectively is the highest peak that sits at the western end of the quarry and sits between the current quarry and Skye. It is an extensive piece of area. It's extensive natural woodland of the Adelaide Hills, and it does provide both amenity for Skye, but also quite a barrier to whatever might be coming out of that quarry. Second is there is question around silica. There's no question silica's coming out of the quarry. From what I can understand from Hanson's, that's fairly common in regard to such quarries. How much of it and whether it's dangerous is unclear. The cars and verandas of Skye get a high level of dust, and there does need to be some sort of certainty around whether that contains silica that may be dangerous to their health. I don't know it is, I don't know it isn't. It needs to be addressed as to where that does sit. 3 is that Hanson intend, which is great, to actually upgrade their plant. Their plant is quite old. They say it lets out more dust than what a new one would. It's noisier than what a new one is. And it's also situated reasonably close to the edge of the quarry. They intend, to their credit, to build a new one, and I feel that it would make sense to actually make that a requirement to do that sooner rather than later. On that same token, they also intend a truck washing station, which actually stops or reduces at least, the sediment that's coming out on trucks out onto neighbouring roads, particularly McGill Road. And 4th, as it currently says 24/7, they say they don't use it, and perhaps they don't, in which case, let's set hours that they do use at the moment, give them the option that if there's a problem down the track, no worries, perhaps we can get that approved if it's an exception, but don't just leave an open checkbook. I don't think for something they're looking for 100+ years on this, that's a sensible way to go. The last 2 really are a couple of technical things that I'm keen to see Council keep all irons in the fire, and also the fact that at the moment the assessment is not going to be public, and residents feel it's important, and I guess we all would if we lived there, that it does see the sunlight of transparency, and we do know what is happening in regard to assessment of this. I seek your support. 3 minutes, not that hard.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Dawes.
Yes, I will speak. I think this is one of the best motions I've seen from Councillor Piggott. Yeah. Yeah, and it's not an amendment, actually, it's a proposed motion, so I'm very, very pleased. But we did go out and met with the mining operator yesterday evening. The CEO was there, and I think there were 6 of us as well. The reason why I like this motion is there's a great balance between taking the interest of the mining operator with the residents. So I think that's where we should be seeking some sort of resolution here. My concern, and I don't really think the mine operator didn't find an answer for this one, but I think it will come, and it's in the environmental report that the gentleman was here tonight mentioned, is this dust issue. And we have received a map there. I don't know if that's right, Councillor Pickett, is that correct or not? We just don't know. I think that's an issue for them. The other one is the noise issue. And the number of trucks that use that particular road off Horsnell Gully. But I do again congratulate Councillor Pickett here, because he has come up with all the main issues in a very, very clear motion that should help us try to find a solution with the mine operator. Thank you.
Councillor David.
Yeah, thank you. As the co-councillor for the ward, I've received a number of communications recently, but also well before as well, particularly residents almost 2 years ago who were concerned about truck movements throughout the road and the effect that it had on them. They could even say that they heard the trucks and that it woke them up early in the morning, and they had, and I visited a number of residents about it, and also truck storage as well that was located on adjacent properties. I think it's a very difficult concept for a resident, and I think the council has a very important role to play, despite it largely being not in our hands to advocate on their behalf. Particularly one resident, Mrs. Williams, who she essentially built her forever home in Skye, and that was where she was going to spend the rest of her life. And now finding that her concerns was there was going to be a quarry some 400 metres from her house now, when essentially she was expecting it to be wound down and rehabilitated. I think that's very concerning for not only her, but she puts it very well in a long email, setting out all of her concerns about it. I think the council has a very important role to advocate for that, for some of these issues, and Councillor Pickett has summarised that excellently. I think it's difficult to quantify the dust, especially if you don't know what's going to happen, and it's clearly going to be a lot closer to them. But also the blasting and the construction works could have continuing impacts on their serenity. And really Skye is a very special part of the city in its isolation and its outlook. And whilst you don't have a right to a view, I suppose, and I think she wasn't happy with the response that she received from the quarry in terms of her concerns, but what can you really do? And I think that'd be an affronting thing for everybody. So I think that Councillor Pickett's motion is well crafted, and I think we can continue to play an important role to advocate on their behalf and make sensible concessions from the mining point of view. Obviously they wouldn't want to concede anything, because potentially they would want to operate at all hours of the night. They might have a large job coming in and they want to move through at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I think Councillor Pickett nailing their colours to the mast, I think, is clever in that. So I hope that the administration take that on board and do everything we can to protect our residents, even though our ability to control what happens here is limited.
Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, I thank Councillor Pickett for an excellent motion. I attended the information session and the site tour yesterday, and the things that jumped out at me were, it was fascinating, especially with the history of the site and just the general operations. The one thing with my work health and safety background that jumped out at me is the silica dust issue. Re-emerging now as a major work health and safety issue. It was years ago with miners, and it was controlled, and the risk was largely removed. But now with the use of silica in a lot of building work and kitchen bench tops, those sort of things, Cutting of silica we're seeing major emergence of silica as a workplace injury, which is a tragic injury. A lot of very young men dying from this. So it's a major also public health issue, because if there's blasting going on and there's silica dust raised, it's settling on people's windowsills and verandas. It's really something that has to be measured and observed. The other issue that worried me is the trucks, the huge numbers. I mean, there's thousands of tonnes of trucking going on, using the access roads to truck off the mining spoil, and then trundling down McGill Road. And I don't know what traffic controls are in place. Everybody seems to think that's all right and it's just routine. But then there's the other the issues, the environmental issues, and actually really in this day and age, a mine so close to residential areas shouldn't be operating 24/7, in my opinion. And then there's the environmental issues of the associated vegetation, the land and the soil regeneration, and re-establishing and rehabilitating the site. So I think this will give us the ability to, hopefully, with the government, influence better outcomes on the site. So thank you, Councillor Piggott.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to, I wanted to just speak and ask if I can do it's not very, well, I suppose it might be a variation or amendment, but the officer's recommendation that Council number 2 continues to work with the state government and enhancing construction materials to ensure that the interests of the City of Burnside residents are taken into consideration prior to final approval of the revised mine operating plan. I think that is a very succinct and carefully put together recommendation from the officer. And I've mapped that onto this proposed motion, which is very thorough, but I don't think it quite maps into this proposed motion. And I was wondering if Councillor Piggott wouldn't mind slightly adjusting or adding to item 5, because he's got it there, continues to work with the relevant departments, state government, enhancing construction, yep. And then he says to achieve the above outcomes, but I just was wondering if he could just replace or add to ensure the interests of Council Burnside residents are taken into consideration prior to final approval of revised MOP and to achieve the above outcomes or something like that. I just feel I just didn't want to lose that nuance. Thank you.
I think the two things could work together. It's up to you whether you accept it, and also the seconder, who was Councillor Dawes. Yeah. I think it's that continuity of working is actually the critical thing that I think Councillor Henschke is looking at there.
Perhaps the words then should read, so perhaps bring in the original from the, see how she goes.
Could you cut and paste the original one in there and then they can play with it?
I would like Councillor Henschke's approach, though, to still include and achieve the above outcomes. So I think perhaps it's the original and then bung on the above outcomes at the end, if that's okay. Right. Does that make sense?
To ensure that.
Perhaps we should take out prior to final approval of revised mine operating plan, because it presumes there will be one. That may be just being a bit nice.
Just ensure that. Thanks, Wendy.
And to achieve the above outcomes.
Councillor Dawes, you happy with that?
Yes,
slight amendment, like alteration, won't call it amendment? Okay.
And
So you wanted to add something else in terms of what you're talking about?
just wanted to discuss, just check something. The item 4.1 about no approval given beyond stage 3, etc. I just have a question that, is this, I just wondered whether the company needed to look at that big business case to actually do anything at all, because they're trying to invest capital into making this thing fly, but they kind of need the whole story to do that, the whole business plan going forward, stage 3 as well. I just wondered whether that was really going to be a inhibiting
I don't think it's something we can play with.
clause
Go
there.
ahead.
Through Madam Mayor, my perspective on this is that I think
Is that
this
okay?
goes to us supporting the concerns of our residents rather than putting the interests of a private company over our residents. So certainly my view is that it's appropriate and that we should pursue this. Ultimately, it is the government that will make
The
that
decision
call,
anyway.
but I think it's appropriate for us to try and support our residents in their concerns.
Councillor Piggott, doesn't seem to be anybody else wishing to speak, so I'm coming back to you.
Well, I haven't got much more to say. I don't want to jinx it, actually. Thank you for your support. I wouldn't mind picking up, Councillor Henschke's right. I think the consideration from, if I was working for Hanson's, that's an argument I would make. We need the whole thing to make this fly. We can't do a $30 million upgrade of the plant. And that may or may not be true. However, when you go up there and you look at what appears to be only recently known as Mountain Sky, but it's it's got a name, there's so many reasons that shouldn't be knocked over. And, you know, that is a main play. And I don't doubt that there'll be push and shove. But I'm optimistic that our local member will, if anyone's good at push and shove, it's our local member. And I'm optimistic that she will pick up this and try and work something. It's an ideal opportunity, actually, if nothing else, to really get a good result on behalf of all parties. The mine continues. I don't think anyone's looking to kibosh that, but it is a chance to sort all the other things out. And that fourth stage is a stretch too far, given where this quarry sits relative to the city. So I seek your support on it. Thanks a lot.
All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you, Mayor. I've pulled this just to, firstly, just essentially go with the officer's recommendation, but I just wanted to point out the great outcome that it looks like we could be getting a substantial amount of federal money for local roads and community infrastructure from federal government. And as you see in the paper, there are a number of projects, and I just wanted to point out one in particular, which is really great, because the community in Dulwich have been working closely with the administration on raising awareness about cut-through traffic, road safety, and it's great to see that's a project that meets the criteria and hopefully we'll be receiving funding to calm traffic down and create a place which it deserves, like many other areas in the city of Burnside. There are many other precincts in the city of Burnside, and I do hope that this will be the start of many more to come. So thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Lemon? Yes, and I'll just follow on from that. I had a call from one of my local residents this week about the upgrade of the intersection of Fullerton Road and Glen Osmond Road, and he was really disappointed that right turn arrows on both sides of Fullerton Road were not going to take place because he lives in Eastwood and gets nothing but cut-through traffic on John Street. So I actually think we need to look at better ways of engaging with state government when they're upgrading intersections, so that they're very aware of their decisions not to have an arrow can actually have severe repercussions on neighbouring streets. And one of the things I said, well, and as I said to him and as I've said in this chamber more than once, if the arterial roads work properly, we would never have to cut through traffic, never. They don't, and it seems as though they're getting worse, and I don't know that these intersection upgrades are going to make much difference. If anything, from the way I look at it, they're probably going to make it worse. So we need to make a lot more inroads in having friends in state government that actually take notice of what local councils say.
Councillor Lemon, is that Councillor, I didn't see who went first, Councillor Davey and then Councillor Piggott.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions of the CEO, if I may. On page 198, among your list of meetings, you met with the Burnside CFS and went for a tour of the facility. Has that all been upgraded now? Is that work completed?
Through Madam Mayor, Councillor Davis beat me to it. The short answer is no. So that they're still looking at how they can either get a new shed or look at doing some design changes to their current garaging at the top to fit, what's the vehicle at the bottom called, Councillor Davis? The larger unit up the top, the big one. So I've committed that they're going to look at providing a bit of a revised design that we'll have a bit of a look at and see if we can't help them to get an outcome. Yeah.
Because they actually put the development application in, didn't they, to do all that work?
I haven't seen the original one. Not sure whether Mr. Cooper's aware of that.
They took us on a tour and showed us what they were going to do.
They're looking at a revised option, which is should be a cheaper option, which is hopefully more achievable.
Thanks. And the other query I had was a meeting with the Burnside Hockey Club. They don't exist in Burnside, do they?
Through Madam Mayor,
they no longer exist.
It's quite correct. Well, they certainly exist, but they don't have a ground within the city of Burnside. And it was a meeting where they're looking to work with, I think, GNESA around a parcel of land that currently sits within Campbelltown to try and achieve an outcome of obtaining their own home ground.
So in Campbelltown? or here?
I think that's where the UniSA land sits that we're
Oh,
talking about.
McGill campus. Oh,
Yes,
right.
yes.
Right.
So it really was, it was just a meeting really to, well, and to meet me, but also to inform me of where how they were looking to proceed, and to keep the conversation ongoing and where we can help, if we're able to help, should the time arise.
One more question. I never know whether to turn my thing.
One at a time, Jane.
Oh.
And look, forgive me if I should know this answer, but in regard to the Dulwich Avenue traffic calming, what are we actually doing? Do we know what we're doing and what it's going to cost? And I probably should know that, but could you just remind me, please?
Through Madam Mayor, no, that's actually a fair question.
Thank you.
So I made a commitment to try and work through a solution that was a practical and achievable outcome. So at this stage, what I'm looking to cost up is the current crossing is built at 75 millimetres high. The legislation allows that to be constructed at 100 millimetres high. So I'm looking to reconstruct that to a new height, but then also at two intersection points, and if I had a map I'd remember the roads, construct elevated platforms either side of that crossing, and they will be elevated platforms that fill out the intersection, and they will be the plan, sorry, in my mind, is to construct them at 100 mils high, and the tops of each of those crossings will be tactile, so that you not only achieve, obviously, the effect of the speed hump, but you also achieve the tactile effect, which should help slow vehicles down. So that's where my head's at the minute. That's what I'm currently having our staff work on costing to try and get the long-term solution there.
Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thank you for reminding me about that. Sorry, I forgot. Staffing issues. Chris, I just wanted to clarify, we have a whole lot of positions vacant. Have they been as a result of staff leaving, or are they newly created positions?
Through Madam Mayor, no, all the roles that you see here are currently within our existing structure. There are no new roles that have been created. And I guess when a role becomes vacant, we always go through a process of reviewing it to make sure we still need it and it's fulfilling operational need. So as soon as those, you know, there's the few at the top there, as soon as undertaken, and if we're happy, we'll commence the recruitment processes.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I have a question, just a clarification. So the Dulwich Avenue calming, I think it's Gurney Road that you're looking for, which is the intersection, it's the T-junction. Is that going to be like going from here to Bunnings? You know, at the Bunnings, I don't know the name of it, where you go along the extension of Norwood Parade and you come to a T-junction on, I think, Little Rundle Street. And then the whole thing is like this bouncy little mattress. Is that what you're talking about? Is that what you're planning?
Through Madam Mayor, I don't have the bouncy mattress in mind, but if you think about, is it Rundle, the extension of, is it Rundle Street? The narrowing they've done with the universities in Highley Street, sorry? Okay. I'm picturing. I'm going to call it a cobblestone effect. It's not cobblestones, but it's a stone work effect.
Which has a bit more of a bump to it.
Yeah. So it's not designed necessarily to upset your vehicle, but it will be make it audible when your tyres go across it, rather than a smooth concrete finish.
Thank you. Just back to the positions that are vacant, can you clarify to me, it's been on for a couple of months, the civil maintenance team member and what that position is, please? I don't understand what's civil maintenance.
Through Madam Mayor, I can confirm what civil maintenance is. That was when I went out that day and patched a road. But I'll hand it over to Mr. Camp.
Through your worship, yeah, Chris was donned the uniforms for one day and got just past marks as a new trainee. It's part of the asphalting, the crew that does a lot of the civil maintenance and the works around the city. So we have approximately 7 or 8 team members as part of that. We're reviewing our service levels and response time rates at this stage just now to determine whether we require replacement of that position or whether it's better used elsewhere. But that's a standard process that we go through with every position, and once it's determined as a need, we'll commence the recruitment process if necessary.
Councillor Lemon?
Yes, thank you. If as the CEO has said, the raised part of the road will be hard surface rather than the bouncy soft stuff that they've got around Bunnings in Kent Town, and it's cobblestone, so it's a hard surface, is that likely then to result in complaints from immediate neighbours because of noise, because of road noise, because cobblestones, you actually do make a lot more noise on cobblestones than you do on asphalt, so that concerns me because that particular intersection has got a lot of people that complain.
If maybe, Mayor, one of the key commitments that I'm making is that any solution will be undertakes significant community consultation, particularly of those residents that are going to be living and surrounding it. So no solution will go in until we've understood the impact and addressed the concerns of those residents. So I am cognizant of that, yes.
Councillor Piggott.
Yeah, look, I'd like to speak to the motion. I support the motion. As newly elected on the CEO committee, actually, what I would, and even if I wasn't, I feel it is worth, or it's not worth, it is important, I think, that we congratulate the CEO on his financial year review that is in as attachment B, because it does show the sheer volume of work towards those KPIs that has been done and achieved, and that he is setting a cracking pace with the support of his team. So I would just like to congratulate him on that, and of course we expect the same to continue through into 2021.
I thank you for making that point. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I was getting to that too. I endorse the list of all the work that needs to be done and the challenges in attachment B. It's significant, and it's a great way for us to keep track of it all, and I'm sure for the CEO. I just have one query. Is it possible with the list in attachment A to call that reports for council resolutions? It's on page 206. It says reports requested to be presented to council. Aren't they reports from council resolutions?
Through Madam Mayor, I think that's a correct statement. They're a summary of where council has resolved to receive a report. So I'm happy to say requested via resolution or something to clarify that, if that helps.
Just resolutions to come to be brought to council or something like that. Perhaps would be clearer.
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All right, then I shall go back to Councillor Henschke.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Davey, turn your microphone off, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all. And yes, also one big item happening tomorrow night, as pointed out in the CEO's report, is the online community forum regarding the planning and design code. It's a very significant undertaking that the administration's done, and I congratulate them on that too.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Councillor Davey, Mayor's report.
Happy to move in accordance with, I thought I had a query, but no, I'm happy to move the motion.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Davis. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, wait a minute. Councillor Carbone.
Sorry, Your
He
Worship.
just have his hand up before I...
That's all right. Happy to second this. I also just wanted to just pose a vote of thanks to you, Your Worship. You have been our mayor for the last 2 years, halfway through our term. You've been a very good and hardworking and fair and balanced mayor for all of us. Personally speaking, you have always been good for advice and support. And I think I speak for all of us when we are very appreciative of all the hard work you've been doing. Also, I've noticed that you've gone outside your comfort zone in the past 2 years, particularly when it comes to our social media videos. And I just wanted to, now's probably the best time to do it. It's your report, and of course it's the end of the year. So I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done. And also, finally, for those that were able to attend your dinner on Friday night, I'd just like to thank you for that. Of course, you funded that yourself. That was not funded by council. That was your personal gift to all of us. And I just wanted to thank you.
I think that's worthy of an amendment, don't you? I'd like to amend the motion if I could. That point 2, that council thank the mayor for her outstanding efforts through the year.
I'd like to move a further amendment. Thank Councillor Etiquette.
And speaking to that, is that I concur with Councillor Carbone, and I think it is worthy that it was raised, and I think it is worthy that it gets in the minutes. So, and I feel it's highly acceptable to actually do that. It is a tough job with a lot of facets, a lot of moving parts, and I think our mayor has coped with all those moving parts very, very well. So I'd like to make that amendment.
Oops, I haven't got my microphone on. Those in favour of the amendment? Carried. I should have said against. Carried. We have, let me just, oh, I've got to put the motion, sorry. Those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll read the motion out because I have a couple of slight additions. The motion is that to demonstrate the effects, so it's apostrophe, yes, plural effects of the increase in urban infill as a result of recent planning changes and those proposed, council cite in the submission to phase 3 at part 3 trees or wherever suitable, comma, due on 18th of December 2020, that evidence-based national research undertaken of councils across Australia conducted by it's just the RMIT University, Centre of Urban Research. So it doesn't need to be Royal Melbourne Institute, it's the RMIT. Thank you. RMIT University. No, it's not university. It is a university now, yeah. It's called the RMIT University. Centre of Urban Research between 2016 and 2020, published as Where Will All the Trees Be on November the 11th. 1.1 identifies that in relation to City of Burnside, there has been an increase of 5.2% in grey cover, identified as hard surfaces such as roads, pavements and roofs, which is undesirable. And will add to the amount of heat generated in suburbs. And 1.2 identifies a 1.9% loss of green cover across the City of Burnside over this period, leaving existing cover at 42%. 2, Council advises that while the city is growing, Burnside faces a significant challenge to arrest the decline in its climate-modifying green cover and requires the planning controls to be able to control the increase in urban infill the increase in urban infill resulting in grey cover across the suburbs. So it's to be able to control the increase in urban infill resulting in grey cover across the suburbs. And that 3, the City of Burnside write to the Honourable Vicky Chapman, comma, as... Write to the Honourable Vicky Chapman, comma, as the local Member of Parliament, outlining these concerns for the Burnside community. Sorry, I didn't have a chance to send it. I wanted to exclude that because I wanted this as her separate role. Yes. You reckon put local member for Bragg rather than Parliament? Outlining these concerns for the community, Burnside community, in relation to the Planning and Design Code review. Thank you. Sorry about those small changes. Our review, as I mentioned, our comments are due next week into this. And I'm acutely aware and concerned, as you all are, about the development and the infill increases which is taking place across our suburbs, and the impact that this is having on our infrastructure, and particularly the loss of our trees and green cover, plus the increase in urban warming and heat islands from the increased hard surfaces and grey cover. Our planning changes in recent years have enabled this, but to date we've not had the metrics to be able to effectively challenge what is currently planned by the government, or what's in place and what's currently planned. The RMIT University report of the 11th of November, so it was only released a month ago, outlines the research they have undertaken in all councils across Australia to start this process. They have quantified the amount of green cover, so that's the trees, lawns, understory plantings lost, along with the expanding grey cover, which results from the larger roof areas of housing, the increase in paved areas and road surfaces, as these hard surfaces replace the mainly domestic gardens and trees cover removed to enable development. So it's the loss of our big homes, and then we all know the story. I believe our submission needs to detail how this is affecting our community. The staff have put together a very good draft of this, outlining a lot of our concerns, especially our heritage and conservation. But I think we need to point out how it affects us at the coalface in this detail in Burnside. The report shows that we've lost 1.6% of our green cover in the last 4 years, and that's we've had the commensurate increase in grey cover of 5.2%. So that's really quite worrying. And as we know, we had heat mapping undertaken with the Resilient East in 2018, and that indicated the hot spots and the urban warming that's taking place. So while we're working hard to counteract the heat island effects of the grey cover with our own green plantings strategies, we're hardly keeping pace with what is being lost. So I hope you'll support this to actually have the staff beef up our submission in light of that report. It's a statistically valid report done by a valid organisation. I sent the link around. City of Burnside is finding it challenging to keep ahead of, so that we don't lose too much more of our green cover. But this will highlight the difficulties we're having, and hope that the changes aren't too significant in the new version of what will come out. Thank you.
A seconder? Councillor Henschke, do you wish to speak?
Very quickly, yes, thank you, Councillor Davey. It's absolutely shocking that we're going to be having this, if this rate continues. So important that the zoning that we end up with, we have as much established suburban zone as possible, protections, and then we, with all the rainfall and runoff issues in due course, a lot of grey area, a lot of rainfall and runoff, and that affects our stormwater system. So thank you very much.
Councillor Lemon?
I applaud the intention of this, but I've got some serious problems with some of the stats in here, I'm afraid. You say here in your 1.2 that we've got an existing cover of 42%. Now, that is not true. We might have an existing cover of 42% across the board in Burnside, but that certainly isn't the case in Glenside, or in Glenunga, or in Eastwood. So to say that in a motion and to direct administration to use those stats to make a submission to the state government and planning is, I think, not right, because 42% of green cover, if that's what and I haven't read the report, I'm sorry, but if they're saying we've got 42% green cover, that's actually not right, because we've recently done some studies and they've been locally done, and Greening Adelaide wants 30% cover in most suburbs. I think we've got 35. So I don't know where 42 comes from, but it's not right. So I don't think we should send our administration off with bad stats. The second issue, so I'm really concerned about that, and even if you put any general figure in there, what point we need to make is, and this brings me to my second point, is the causal link to infill. In these stats, we've got an increase of 5.2% in grey cover, whereas we've only got a loss of 1.9% in green cover. So where's the causal link? How do we make that causal link? Did that report make a causal link? Has anybody made the causal link? You can't just say anecdotally, we've got all these new houses and all these new roofs and we've lost X amount of trees. We know this to be true, but if you're talking about evidence base, you need to actually make that causal link. This motion does not make that causal link. So until you make that causal link, and then you can actually do it suburb by suburb, because some suburbs are actually worse off than others in Burnside, I don't know that we're actually giving administration a lot to go on, except an idea. And that bothers me somewhat, I'm afraid. So while I absolutely applaud this, I think without generalising this more and taking the stats out, if the state government looks at 42% and says, oh, they've got 42%, they are never going to take any notice of us again, because we've got 10% more, 12% more than what they want for every other suburb. So we can lose 12% and we'll still make their stats. I just think we need to be careful when we use stats, and we need to be accurate, and we need to talk about different suburbs, and if we're going to generalise across the city as a whole, we need to say this is a general figure that is aggregated across the city as a whole. And that's all I have to say.
Councillor Piggott.
I have a question, although it's along similar lines. I think I have read the report, and I will get to the question. I think part of what Councillor Lemon is reflecting is that we've got, I don't know what the percentage of the Hills Face zone, what percentage of Burnside is Hills Face zone, but it's obviously seriously green, which is bringing up the 42%. It also means that the 1.9% is probably a whole lot worse within the suburbs, because that's where we'd be losing it from. It's a survey of 1,000 points within the city of Burnside, and they basically take those points and look at how green or grey it is, and there must be other options, I guess. But my question, was that when we get a report like this, do we pick up on, I mean, they are headline figures by their nature, but do we as an administration, or would we, do any work to try and understand that? We're also listed in there as the second worst grower of grey cover, I think, in the 131 councils. We seem to have, and like I say, I think our numbers are improved because we've got some urban, Hills Face zone that's helping us. And then you look at another category, and City of Unley is the best on ground so does, perhaps my question is, will administration do any sort of work off the back of this? I think it is a respected, I feel it's a respected piece of research. It is by its nature limited by its limitations. However, it does show some headline figures that we should try and understand further, I feel. So is that something that would normally happen, or does it need a motion of council?
Through Mayor, I'll through to Mr. Cooper in a second, but it's...
Dan's waving his hand around.
Okay. We'll go with Mr. Cant then. My only overarching comment is that obviously our ability to address some of these things is going to be eroded by these planning changes, the lack of control we are going to have over our planning, our code. But Mr. Cant.
Through you, I should probably set myself up for failure here. To answer your question, Councillor Piggott, yes, we are aware of this report, and we have started looking into it and assessing it against our own figures and the recent work that we've done in this space as well. I sent all elected members an email on the 24th of November, picking up on this report and talking about the work that we're doing in this space. Oh, that's okay. It's easy to lose in the field of emails. The report that is referred to here acknowledges that the figures and the percentages given are indicative only. The work that we are doing with our regional councils, with the LIDAR work, will give us a much better understanding of the actual canopy cover in the actual areas, as Councillor Lemon talked about, with respect to meeting those targets and those percentages within those areas. We'll also get a much better and accurate understanding of the change in that canopy cover over time, and we'll continue to work on that.
Just a further comment on that, I think I totally agree with Mr. Cant. I was contacted by the media after this report came out, and they tried to argue with me that it was canopy cover, loss of trees. And I said, no, it's infill. And they said, oh, but that's not what this report says. So I think there are, you know, what we know about our own area is a lot more grounded than when it is done by somebody who's in, I'm not criticising the research, but you know, you're right about the Hills Face zone, and Mitcham's the same. They have a massive area of Hills Face zone, but then they have areas of Lower Mitcham that are quite intense in development and are suffering the same problems with urban infill, where houses are being knocked down, old houses are being knocked down, gardens being completely destroyed and lost. So I think we do have to be a bit careful with data and how it's interpreted, that's what I say. Okay, anyone else? Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, our planning reports show that it is definitely an infill problem. I was looking back on most of them, and it's demolishing and putting large houses on, dividing into two. Today, in the advertiser, it said that Marion Council has launched a public campaign against the state's proposed planning and design. They're calling it Protect Our Streets and will include newspaper ads and leaflets for ratepayers. And they're targeting the fact that block frontages are minimum block sizes will be reduced and houses will be able to occupy 60% of the block instead of 40%, so there's less chance for a tree. I'm just wondering if Burnside Council has thought about doing a similar campaign in our area with our residents, or is it too late?
Through Madam Mayor, largely it's going to be too late to change tact on our strategy. I think you'll find though that probably the only major difference is probably the size of the ad that they're taking out in the advertiser. I think our strategy has many strengths that will get directly to our ratepayers as opposed to some of the broad blanket advertising that Marion's undertaking. So I'm quite confident that our strategy will have more personal impact on our ratepayers, or more chance of getting into them to lodge a submission. I don't know if Mr. Cant wanted to add anything to that.
In case you missed the ad too, on Thursday night at Glenunga Hub, State Planning Commission are running a session open to the community for anyone who wants to come along and ask questions of the State Planning Commission about the new plans. And that's from 4 to 8 at the Glenunga Hub. You have to register. I wouldn't have known about it except I just happened to see it in the advertiser over the weekend.
If I may, Madam Mayor, I think also the public session that we are running, we've already had close to 30 people sign up for that, which is a good indicative early numbers. So we are getting traction with our strategy, that's for sure.
Just following on from that though, you remember that when Councillor Hubel and Councillor Harvey, they did a leaflet drop in their area and all those people rocked up for the planning talk that was given at the Beaumont Bowling Club. They got far more than anyone else because leaflet drops do work.
Yes, thank you for letting me know about the Glenunga Hub. It'll be very interesting. Unfortunately, it's the day after tomorrow. I know. But it would be wonderful if the residents of Lestrange Street could go and remonstrate with the Planning Commission about what's going on at Glenunga High School, where neighbours haven't even been notified that 9-metre tall buildings are going to go up next door.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. In relation to, I suppose, 1.2 and possibly 1.1 and the actual figures, obviously the figures might be concerning. If one were to move an amendment, what would the administration suggest to tidy up those areas to give you guys flexibility to put in the correct figures?
Through Madam Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Cornish. To turn my mind to it, it might be that it may be simpler to simply not refer to those figures, refer to the document and as a guide for our officers, without perhaps publishing in our minutes the specific figures, if that helps people's concerns.
If that's the case, I'd like to move an amendment to remove 1.1 and 1.2 from them.
Oh, actually...
Oh, just take out the figures?
Yeah. So,
okay.
So Councillor Cornish, you can read quite well, just with an increase without specifying what it is.
If that's okay.
Is the mover willing to accept that? Yes. All right, and the seconder? Lillian, Councillor Henschke, okay?
Yes, been taken care of.
All right, I don't have anyone else who wishes to speak, so I'm going back to Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you everyone for your help and assistance. The report is very interesting and very valid, and so I will appreciate having a report and seeing what the staff, how the staff interpret it and what we can do. Well, it's essentially what we're already doing in terms of our greening programs and environmental initiatives. The change we need is to be able to better regulate our planning and control our planning and the loss of our big old homes and not have quite so much, so many big buildings going up with that are paved all around with no green around them. That's essentially a very badly put way of saying it. We rank very highly still for our urban green cover. We're still at the second greenest place, but what this report shows is that we're losing it, and we're losing it at a great rate, a greater rate than we can actually counter it with our planting initiatives. So that was that 1.9 figure. And the 4.5 percent figure is the actual rate of the paving and the big house roofs and the increased hard areas and surfaces that we all know we're surrounded by that are warming our suburbs. So we still would like a little bit more control over our development and our ability to maintain our green and prevent some of the just getting more hard surfaces and increased heat in our suburbs. So including this in a submission, more specifically identifying this to the planning people, hopefully will mean there might be some changes. We don't know, we can only ask.
Thank you. I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor Jones, were you against or for? I'm for. Thank you.
Sorry, Your Worship. Just a matter of procedure. It was my understanding that if a motion on notice is presented, it has to be moved in accordance with how it was printed. And we did some tinkering. I just wondered, what's the proper process that we should be going through that when we do it in the future?
You were right the first time.
Yeah. So, yeah, through Madam Mayor, you're quite correct. However, the Mayor and certainly Councillor Jones brought it to our attention as well. But given we want to be consistent for this meeting, but going forward we'll adhere to the adopted protocol.
Well, Councillor Piggott's wasn't a motion on notice, that was an officer's recommendation. So
True.
There is a distinct definition between the two. I suppose my question is, what should we actually do going forward if we've got changes to our own motions?
So we follow the procedure. Archie? So through Madam Mayor, so the procedure says that an amendment must be moved if you wish to change what's published in the agenda. Okay.
So the mover moves it.
Yep.
Someone then, you have to negotiate with someone else around the chamber to make
Yes.
an amendment,
Yep.
and you could accept it as a variation if you really wanted to.
That's correct.
Could the mover and second just to agree to adopt immediately the variation?
Look, I think the warning from that is that you need to make sure that you really consider what you write first before you submit it, because it's going to be a long-winded process if you don't stick to what you actually present. And I think that's a warning for us all. I'm not being critical at all, but because we're learning all these new processes are new to us, and they're going to take a little bit of time. But Mr. Cowley said to me, I think we'll just be kind tonight. So, so that's what we decided to go ahead with, but we were aware of an inaccuracy. Now, Councillor Lemon, you had something as well?
Yes, speaking of inaccuracies, anybody that read the Herald in the last edition would have seen that I wrote an article waxing lyrical about Councillor Dawes and Councillor Turnbull. Well, the truth is I didn't.
Oh.
Although I did say to Councillor Dawes that he's very lucky that he wasn't blowing his own trumpet, somebody else did it for him. And inadvertently it was me. My article somehow got mixed up with that one. My article should be coming out next week. And I'm happy it will come out because the article I wrote was exhorting people, or encouraging them, to make a submission to the Planning and Design Act before the 18th of December. It would have been nice if it was out last Thursday because it would have given them a bit more time. It'll be out this Thursday, which gives them just over a week, but hopefully that will happen. I just thought I'd let the chamber know.
And I'm going to be mentioning it in my Burnside highlights tomorrow morning. That'll go on online as well tomorrow night. So again, we've got a bit more than a week. And I know that a number of organisations and groups have also been reminded about the template, which is, I have to say, excellent. And I know that I've passed those comments on to the CEO already for him to pass it on to the staff. I think that template letter is absolutely brilliant. The piece of work that's gone, or the amount of work that's gone into preparing that has been amazing. And if lots of people are bombard those letters to Vicky Chapman, hopefully it'll have some impact. But if you haven't read it, that template and that letter, and done it yourself, and downloaded it, signed it and sent it off, do so, please. We don't have any confidential items, so I will close the meeting at 10:01 p.m. And thank you all, and wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And remind you that there is some food and drink available, and it's not going to be in the Linden Room, it's going to be